Welcome to the Christians Who Date podcast. I'm here with Kalli and Lauren, and we have some bonus guests today that I'm so excited about. This is like a celebrity couple.
That's right.
Famous.
Our eyes.
World renowned.
Keyword.
Literally, the second we got them actually on the schedule, I texted Kalli and Lauren and I was like, I feel like I just landed some celebrities for the podcast.
We all felt that way.
These people are famous in our eyes.
Yes, but Tim and Naomi Specht are on the podcast today.
Woo!
And we've talked about it before, but you can't actually be on our podcast unless you've lived with me. And
It is the rule.
Naomi actually lived in a house with me and Kalli and 3 other women.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. In Redding, California.
Shared a room with Kalli.
Yes.
You're so
Yeah.
lucky. She's so clean.
We had a poster of Martin Luther King that Tim bought her next to her bed.
Nice.
And when we go to bed at night, we say goodnight, Martin.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, was that like
Forgot
a
about
serious
that.
thing, Tim? Was that like a love offering poster?
It was
It was like a Christmas
well. Naomi was highly inspired by MLK, and this quote on this poster was one of my favorites, and so it was just a match made in heaven. So I bought it for her.
Yeah, I felt really confused at the time. I think you bought me like a knife and yeah, it was like a knife, maybe like a kitchen knife. It was a kitchen knife because all of our kitchen knives were terrible. And
That's
this
a good
MLK
Aw.
That's a
poster,
good get.
and I was like, "Why are you getting me a poster?" Like,
Posters are coming back. They're coming back.
Yeah.
we hung him on
But
the wall.
We hung him on the wall. And she said, I'm putting this up for the sake of my relationship.
The sacrifice. It wasn't a sacrifice for me. It was a sacrifice for her.
Oh, it was
And
good.
Kalli was like, okay, I'll sacrifice for your
Yeah, I
relationship
was
too.
like, all right, it's on your side of the room. You can do what you want.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. And so, were you going to say something?
No, keep going.
Okay. I was just going to say that also Kalli and I drove 19 hours to
That's a long time.
Billings, Montana to be there for Tim and Naomi's wedding. So that's
And it-
another memory of ours.
And it was worth it, but it was brutal, but it was worth it.
The drive was brutal, but the wedding was great.
Oh, great dancing.
Yes.
Yeah. Tim came out in a dinosaur
T-Rex.
costume? Yeah.
T-Rex.
T-Rex
Yes.
inflatable.
Yeah.
It was so
There were
good.
glow sticks.
Dicks.
My
Yep.
heart will go on. Celine Dion. That was a
Oh,
climax
yeah.
moment.
Oh my
gosh.
It was incredible. It was incredible.
So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Honestly, it's even that we could honestly draw like a graphic organizer of like all the connections. Because it's like now Tim and Naomi are like the youth pastors at the church, and I'm a youth leader. And so I get the privilege of serving alongside them / they're leading me like once a week. And pretty much anyone who like mentions their name, I just talk them up for like 10 minutes because they are the real deal. Like some of
Yes.
the like
That's true. She mentions
Just-
you a lot.
A little too
Some
much,
of
honestly.
We don't mind. We don't mind.
Lauren does-
You know, we all have our place.
Callie's like, I lived in the same room as Naomi. I don't know
have
about all
it.
this.
I don't know. Hey, also Naomi would make us donuts, homemade donuts, and those were incredible. So,
Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah.
Sounds like a
Naomi's
dream.
So
yes.
many donuts.
Oh,
Yeah.
delicious.
I would sit at the counter as Naomi made donuts and just glean from her wisdom.
hmm Andrea and I also called her the Proverbs 31 woman, and we
Yes.
still to this
she
day,
is, yeah.
I'm like, yep. If there's anyone, it is Naomi.
Yeah.
It's honestly true.
It's because of all my domestic skills. So
She just made 2 purses out of hemp cord, like
What?
hemp rope.
course.
Whoa.
And then when she was about to give birth to our third son, I come home and she's painting a wall. I'm like, what are you doing? It was amazing.
Proverbs 31.
Proverbs 31. She's a dream.
It's
Yeah.
exactly what I would have
Something like that.
predicted,
Teenage
honestly.
dream.
Yeah, yeah. But that's why we want to have them on, is because they are just like two of the highest quality people that we know. Even though I talk about it more than Kalli and Lauren, whatever, it's fine. Because I'm exposed to it on a weekly
Yeah,
basis. Okay.
Exactly.
We're grateful. We're grateful.
So grateful. And I know it's true.
Well, I haven't lived with each of you, which is, but
That's true. Wait, how did you get on here? Just kidding.
I just slipped
He lived
in.
with Naomi that lived with
That's
you
true.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By
So
marriage.
there's
He
connection.
He married in.
Yeah.
but now I've essentially done ministry with Andrea. Lauren and I traveled on a team of ministry students to
South Africa.
South Africa.
Oh.
And Kalli, I just got to hang out with over at what was that name of that house that you guys
Trudy
named it?
Trail.
Trudy
I
Trail.
was like, I don't know that we had
Trudy.
like a real creative
And you
name.
basically gave her a Martin Luther poster for her room because
That's
Kalli
right.
was roommates with Naomi.
It was really for you, Kalli.
Everybody's
Thank you.
connected. Everybody's connected.
Oh, the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, guys, we're so excited you're here. Thank you for coming on, being willing to just share your story and your heart. And I'm really excited for people to get to hear more about you. And yeah, well, maybe we'll start there actually. Do you want to just give a little like short version of like who you are and maybe what you do, what life looks like for you?
Do you want to go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. We are Tim and Naomi, and we live in Austin, Texas. We are the
Heyo.
youth pastors at Bethel Austin, and we have 3 sons, ages 6, 3, and 2.5 months old. We've been married for 7 years, and
We've
what
been
else?
doing youth ministry the entire time.
Yes, we got married September 3rd, 2017.
Mhm.
We went on our honeymoon to Hawaii. 2 weeks later, we were trekking down to the heart of Austin, or the heart of Texas, and we were starting a new life together in a new city, working new jobs. It was the grace of God was with us.
Yeah.
So
That's a lot.
Yeah.
it was
a lot of new.
transition.
And then we got pregnant about like 3 months later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's go.
Wouldn't recommend all that
So
for most
wild.
couples, but
Yeah. It was great.
But Proverbs 31. So
Yep.
Yeah.
She could handle it.
she could handle it.
yeah, I got my poop in a group as they. So she already had hers ready. So yeah,
Group was in a group.
yeah.
Yeah, that's us. So Tim is primarily doing the youth pastoring stuff, and I'm there some, but definitely looks different with every season as far as parenting and being with the boys. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
nice.
it's true. It's a joy whenever we see Naomi IRL in real life at youth.
Thanks. Yes, right now it like feels very hectic to be there, but
Yeah,
that's just because Josh is 2.5 months, so
Yeah.
it's different.
He's
Yeah.
fresh donut.
Oh, that was squishy.
so he's so squishy. Aw. Even when like things are hectic for Naomi, she is like the beacon of peace. That's another thing about Naomi.
That's true.
Is yes, yeah. Whenever I see her at youth, she might have 3 screaming children around her, and she's just like so steady.
Steady.
Yep, it's incredible. I'm taking notes still.
I think you'll be fine, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you.
She'll do great.
Yeah.
It's pretty even good.
I'm like,
And-
there's something about her that's so great.
He's just like me.
Andrea surrounds herself with like peace people, and then I'm like, how did I get in this group? Because I'm crazy. But somehow she
But you're
accepted
not
me.
like stressed. You're not like
I'm
stressed.
dramatic,
You're like
though.
fun. Yeah.
Dramatic.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
a little bit.
In a fun way.
Anyways, okay, back to the specs.
Okay. But we are diving into like some real topics with the specs tonight. We've kind of been going through a series of like, what does it mean to date as a Christian? What does that look like? And we wanted to hit some hot topics, if you will, that really just separate us out from what culture says is okay and the narrative that they're kind of bringing in. And so one of those topics is around pornography. And just Tim has been like incredible with just being vulnerable and sharing his story with it. And he's also a youth pastor. So that's like a real part of his job that still comes up is, like students are dealing with a world that we honestly didn't have to deal with at the level that they are like being exposed and can access pornography and all kinds of different things. So we just wanted to bring them on to kind of share a little bit more about that and really dive into the topic and hit it with some truth, because culture definitely has its own narrative around it. And but it's a topic that's really important, and it's super relevant for today. So we wanted to bring these two on. If you guys are ready, we'll just dive in. Yeah. Tim, if you want to share just a little bit of maybe like your background with it, like how old were you when you were first introduced and that kind of thing to porn?
Yeah. Well, a lot of guys remember like the time, the space, the age, down to like a T. And as I was kind of thinking about that, I don't have that memory of when I was initially, but I can like recall that I think the hook and the root of lust in my life really took place with something as subtle and seemingly tame as like the Sunday JCPenney ads when I would be flipping through to the cartoons in the sports section, and there was the lingerie ad for like Dillard's or whatever, and just not necessarily having the framework for identity or maneuvering temptation at a young age. And so seeing that, just sitting at the breakfast table, ready to read my comics, I'm like, whoa, what is this? And so a lot of thoughts just going through my head. Then you throw cable television in there. If you turn MTV on, back when I was a young teenager, you got stuff like The Real World. You have Girls Gone Wild advertisements going across the TV late at night. And so even without the internet in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was still it was a challenge. But to put like a specific date on it, I had to have been anywhere between the ages of 12 to 14, where I first started to have kind of that sense awaken in me, and then the struggle really like get up in my face to where I knew I was feeling something, battling something, being drawn by this. So yeah, it was at that age.
Yeah, that's got to be such a wild thing when it's like you don't have like the information to know what's going on. You just kind of feel this pull, I guess.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, and it's funny too, because I think about even prior to that age, my family, we moved to Madrid, Spain when I was about 5.5, 6 years old. And I still have a distinct memory. This is kind of a funny memory, but I used to be super into drawing when I was a little kid. And I remember in Spain in our playroom, drawing a picture of like a naked man and a naked woman, and then hiding it behind my my bookshelf because I didn't want anyone to see it. And it's just unique to even think back on that, because it seemed like there was a sense of shame that was already connected to that innocent little drawing in a 6-year-old's mind. And no one had even told me yet that, given me a frame of reference that like, that's bad. Or no one had told me to think about it, how to think about it, how to be grounded in truth regarding this subject. So
Yeah, that's wild. So when you were older, like, 12, 13, 14, did you still have nobody that was kind of talking to you, or what did that look like?
I did have my dad. My dad grew up on Long Island, New York, in a Catholic family of 9 children. His dad was a World War II veteran, so he fought on the ground in Germany. But I'll say my dad gave me far more than he received in his home.
Yeah.
My parents actually came to know the Lord in Madrid when we lived there.
No way.
Yeah. They were both raised in, as people have called the Creasters. There's been this phrase, Christmas, Easter Christians.
Yeah.
So I think my mom was more in that kind of sphere of believing in the Methodist Church, and then my dad went to Mass in the Catholic Church often, but had just never heard the gospel clearly in a way that spoke to his heart. And when he went to Spain, he got invited to a men's retreat and heard the gospel in Spanish. And from what he understood, it touched his heart, and he put his faith in Jesus.
That's wild.
Yeah. You go from a largely evangelical populated nation to a highly unreached nation, or a highly Catholic nation, low evangelical life. And that's where my parents get to meet the Lord. They were in a church that was highly influenced by the Toronto outpouring, and pretty cool. But fast forward to my dad raising me when I was like 12 or 13. It was right around 2000, 2001. My dad and I's love language was baseball growing up, and he took me from Kansas City to Atlanta, Georgia for the Major League Baseball All-Star game.
That's awesome.
And I was stoked out of my mind. Like, it was so exciting. And he used it as kind of a platform to take me through, from what I remember, a focus on the family, kind of how to talk with your son about puberty and sex and stuff.
Okay.
Considering we were going for baseball, I did not give a rip about anything else my dad was trying to tell me. So unfortunately, it didn't really stick.
He tried so hard.
He did.
That's what I love.
He did, and actually, even though none of it took root in me, I shouldn't say that. I think it did. But what I know that I needed was probably more discipleship from my dad on the post side of that. And we've talked about that. But that was the real like initial experience with someone that was seeking to speak to me about this. And then I was part of a pretty amazing group of friends in our youth group at a Vineyard church in the suburbs of Kansas City, and just had a solid group of guys. And they actually, one of the guys initiated an accountability group. It wasn't much accountability. It was a lot of video games and just confessing our porn issues. But to look back on that and know I had friends that were trying, and to know I had a father who made the effort and sowed a seed, does mean so much to me, looking back on it. So I don't think I really found people to. I don't think I had the right framework for even accountability until I was in my 20s. And so high school was a challenge to be vulnerable I didn't know what that was. Confession,
Yeah.
none of that. So
Yeah. It's such a like isolating thing for a lot of people. Like even if it, wasn't maybe the most ideal accountability framework, it's like probably just having people that knew about it at some level like cuts the shame. I don't know. Did you think that?
100%. I mean, I think the best things, any person that's listening to this tonight, that or whenever you're listening to this, one of the greatest things you can do to get free in this area is to become obsessed with living in the light, with vulnerability, with confession. I've personally made it a goal of mine to call my own bluff whenever I sense something in my heart that I know is off. And I mean, Naomi can tell you this. If I have a dream that's like super weird or sexual, that's just like, oh, I wake up, I feel slimed. I'm telling her. If I'm at work and I know my thoughts have been going sideways, like I just tell her right away. And so to not allow any root to go in, like while it can be hard to be vulnerable, the work that would have to go into getting free if that temptation turns into an action would be 10 times harder than
True.
confession and vulnerability to start with.
Yeah.
And I do want to say too, like part of my story that isn't directly attached to pornography, but I think stemmed from it, and this might speak to some people, is when that lust thing started snowballing in my life. I would be sitting in church having thoughts about women in the church going through my head, and feeling so ashamed, like sitting in service. And then there were prophetic people in our church, and I was like, what if they find out like what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
And I was afraid and I was ashamed. And then what happened as well is I like the thoughts got so perverted and twisted that thoughts about my own mother started to enter into my head, and it drove a wedge between my mom and I, to where I was afraid of what I might do because of the stuff that I was battling in my head. And so as a young kid, that's like part of the battle I'm fighting, and it was terrible. Luckily my mom, like I got to speak to my mom about it and like experience forgiveness, and it was incredible. So now that's like she knows, and it's been made right, and I don't have that struggle anymore. But man, not fun at all. So
Yeah. Well, and it's just like I was thinking like it's you're already going through this battle, and then you feel like you have to protect everybody from you, and so you're cutting yourself off from the thing that you need.
yeah, I don't even think I had the framework for that. I was just so like nervous about what I might do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been really, really tough. It just, I'm just thinking about kids like trying to deal with this on their own. It's just so overwhelming. Okay. So, you kind of talked maybe a little bit about what it looked like in high school, and then what happened after that.
Yeah. Well, in high school, I was also in a like horrific 2-year relationship with this girl that was largely dependent upon my sexual activity. It was 100% codependent relationship. So then we go to college and we break up, and I've got this like gaping wound inside of me where I had been leaning upon this person. So I go back to, what feels comfortable, and that was more pornography. I always knew that it was wrong. Like my conscience always testified against me that like this is not right. A lot of that high school small group, just those seeds being planted of what conviction was and righteousness. I didn't necessarily have those words in my vocabulary, but I could feel like in my heart, this is not right. There was always shame afterwards. Anytime I looked at pornography or if masturbation was involved, I never walked away being like, that was a brilliant decision. I feel amazing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, college happened, and I encountered Jesus and made a personal, like, my decision to follow him when I was a sophomore at Kansas State University. And still even just had issues in other relationships with girls, emotional soul tie stuff, not even just physical.
What's a soul tie? Just for anyone who maybe doesn't know
Sure.
what
Yeah.
that means.
I would define a soul tie as a dependency upon a past experience or person that is inhibiting you from living free in the present.
Got it.
Wow. Just whip that
Yeah.
out of a dictionary.
No, that was a good
So
definition.
eloquent.
I feel like soul tie is like a deep connection with someone, whether positive or negative, because it could go either way.
Yeah.
We have
True.
a soul tie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
So,
that's
but
good
it's like
clarification.
You guys have a good soul tie.
Yes, a good one.
Yeah.
Covenant is good. But even in friendships and that kind of thing, it's like that deep connection where you've emotionally or physically gone deep and have that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think to clarify in our current culture, that it isn't just men and women. Like, we look at Jonathan and David. I think that was a like healthy biblical soul tie between two men that was not rooted in anything else than a covenant they had made together, that didn't go into the realms of what a lot of people like to think happened, which was like, oh, they were together sexually in relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anyways, soul tie. Continue on.
Continue.
Yeah. Continue.
Yeah. So
You got saved.
Yeah, you got
I got saved. Yeah. I'm continuing to fight this battle, which, I think is where a lot of Christian men are today.
Yeah.
I don't look at the stats a lot, but the stats I hear are not super, super positive. Even stats I've heard about pastors in America, which is extremely unfortunate. I pray that turns around, but I think most Christian men are in a kingdom of freedom, yet living from a place of bondage, and have not tasted the freedom that Jesus can provide them and wants to give them. And so I continue to kind of fight this battle, and I feel like even my story is what I've heard with a lot of guys, where you just grit your teeth. You get the apps where you're like, okay, I have Covenant Eyes, or I have Triple X Church now on my computer, and there's so many apps you can get. You put all the things in place, and you are going hard after getting free, and you go 3 months and you're feeling good, and then boom, like you're just side blasted by a bad day, or you have a wound that surfaces again and you fall back into it. And so that was kind of the cycle that I was stuck in, was I would get these momentary windows of freedom only to fall back into it. And so I don't think I had really been given the tools that I needed to fight and to be free. And that all started to change when I was in Reading at ministry school. And that was in my second year, which was like 2012, 2013 school year. So I would have been like 24, 25 years old at that point. It was a particular day where I really felt like the Lord started to really press his finger upon this issue in my life. And, I went to church. It was a Sunday, probably heard Bill Johnson preach. get my mind blown by this guy's revelation, amazing worship,
Typical.
maybe some ministry. It's a good day. You're going to a church that's changing the world. And what does Tim Specht do? He goes home, has his lunch, and decides to look at porn and masturbate and after church on a Sunday. And this is all just like so wild to think about. But I'm laying there in my bed, and normally the cycle that I would get stuck in after this is feeling like I had to clean myself up before I could feel good about myself again, and before I could approach God again and really feel like he was excited to have me in his presence. And I just was like, I messed up, but I don't think this is the way. And so I just was like, God, what should I do? And I felt like I heard God speak to my heart, and he said, put yourself in the story of the woman caught in adultery. I was like, okay. So I knew that story. So I picture myself getting dragged out by these accusatory voices that I was experiencing: shame, guilt, condemnation, thrown into the dirt, and all these things. I'm feeling like you have to clean yourself up before you can have any value again. God doesn't want to be around you until you can at least not do this for 3 weeks. Like these voices that are probably so familiar to a lot of people listening. And then I just picture and even like try to hear the footsteps of Jesus coming and walking up to me on the dirt. And one by one, he starts confronting the voices. Are you perfect? Then shut up. Are you perfect? Then shut up. Are you perfect? Then shut up. And then seeing him, like, as much as I can in my imagination, like, okay, Lord, I want to see you. And him looking at me and going, like, who is left to accuse you? Nobody. And neither do I. Go and sin no more. And that was the first time that I probably had biblical restoration happen in my life in a moment of sin like that.
Wow.
Because I think the cross provides that. It's not this cleanup that we have to provide ourselves. That's actually anti-gospel. Jesus has provided everything we need to be restored. And so I have that experience, and then I go to our home group that night, and what is the theme of the night? Purity night at our home group. And they're like, all right, guys, we're confessing all of our sexual sins tonight.
Oh my
No
gosh.
way.
I'm like, you guys
What are the
kidding me?
odds? What are the odds?
So I'm like, I am sitting there, and everyone's just like unloading their stuff, and they're
This is Bethel.
and they're like, yeah, freedom, and we're worshiping, and I'm like, I'm not like, this is so fresh, I can't do this, God. And so we get to the end of the night. There's like 5 minutes left before 9:00, and we're wrapping up. And our home group leader goes, I just feel like there's one more person.
No way.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so I'm like, okay. Like, I was like, yeah, it's me. Like, this afternoon, I looked at pornography and masturbated, and man, just like the outpouring of love and forgiveness and covering was insane. So that was really like the first time that I really sensed the Lord, like, Tim, it's time to get beyond you doing this thing where you grit your teeth and try to do this on your own. And really, we cannot get free of porn, like truly free of porn, without the blood of Jesus. And even in the secular world, yes, you're going to get free from maybe the addiction aspect of it, but the root of why you did that in the first place will not be dealt with until you can receive forgiveness from Jesus and what he's done for you. And that ultimately, like, that's where I ended up. Was unfortunately, I still kind of stumbled my way through these familiar issues. Like it wasn't just like, okay, I was free. Like temptation still kept coming. And I think that's key to remember. Like it's not just going to turn off and on like a light. Like temptation's not just going to disappear. And so it wasn't until I actually was in relationship with Naomi, we started dating. It wasn't until 2017 that I really had what I would call a deliverance moment that empowered me to fight against this thing in a way that I had never been granted permission to do before.
When did you guys start dating? What year was that?
2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys start dating. Yeah. When did this conversation kind of take place? How soon after you guys started dating?
Let's see. We dated for a year initially.
It was in that first year. I don't know. Maybe we'd been dating 6 months. Maybe not even that long.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like rifling through old journals today, trying to find the historical artifacts.
That's right.
The primary documents.
Either way, Tim looked at porn again, and I knew I had to tell her. I couldn't continue. I think just pretending like I was okay, knowing that this is something that was on my heart, and that I had done. And so we went for a walk on Clay Street.
Good old Clay Street.
A historical spot in Redding, California.
Oh, for sure.
What did you think I was taking you on a walk for?
Just for funsies.
Down Clay Street. Oh yeah, that's where Naomi lived though. I forgot.
That's where we both lived. So
yeah,
that's right.
Just going for a walk.
Yeah.
In the neighborhood.
Yeah.
In the ghetto neighborhood.
Yes. Do you want to share this part?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going for a little walk on Clay Street, which that can be dangerous in itself, but we're there, and I'm nervous, but I know I have to do this. And so I confessed to her, hey, I just want to tell you, I looked at pornography. When I confessed to her, she says to me this phrase that taught me so much and just kind of like blindsided me. She said, Tim, this deeply hurts, but it makes me trust you more because I know that you'll never hide anything from me. And personally, when she told me that, I was like, oh, dang. Like I'm talking to a woman right now. I'm not talking to a girl. And I feel like I learned about the nature of God even in this experience because the Lord does want to know everything, and he desires that nothing is hidden. And I think when we become known to him like Jesus desires to know us, that there's a greater trust. And so, yeah, it was just a very impactful moment.
And I don't know that did you really look at porn much after that? I don't remember.
I know it was a struggle in my life, but I did not have like a porn meter going, so it's hard for me to like remember. I hope I did. But again, I didn't get fully free until 2017. So
So Naomi, after Tim kind of shares this, what's your initial reaction and how did you work through this?
Yeah. I mean, I think like what I told him, it definitely hurt because, that's the interesting thing is, especially with wanting people to get free in this area, extending a lot of grace, because oftentimes these men are caught in these addictions when they're so young. And so there's so many factors that have caused, them to get to the place they are. So I'm like, there's a lot of compassion, but at the same time, it is really painful. And you just cheated on me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think I was really, I was sad, obviously, that had happened, but because he chose to tell me, I was like, okay, he's not going to hide it from me, so that if it happens again or something like this happens again, I don't have to be wondering. Which there is like a lot of safety in that too, because it's one thing to be told, it's another thing to find out,
Yes.
And I think too, at that point, we hadn't been dating for a long time. I mean, I was probably at the point where I would have married him, but he definitely wasn't. So we weren't talking about marriage by any means. And so I think that brought in a different dynamic too. I think if it would have been like we were engaged and all of a sudden told me, it would have been a very different experience than we were dating. Yeah, so it was painful. It was a lot. At the same time, I think I recognized that this wasn't like an addiction. It was a struggle for him, because even after that, like he said, I mean, I remember when he fully got free, but in the in-between time, I don't remember there being, times. Maybe there was. I'm sure there must have been like one or two times maybe that you looked at it, but it wasn't like this thing.
Continual thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I do remember when he did get fully free, because there was such a switch, I think, in the way he talked about it and everything. Like you could tell that there was something really deep that was deposited.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Tim first told you about this, was there a thought in your mind like, should I continue dating him? Like, should we break up? Was that a thought? Or what was your experience there?
Not at that point. No.
Totally.
And to be honest, I don't know that I had a lot of experience with this. Like, I hadn't talked to men who had struggled with porn. Like, it also felt a little foreign to me.
Yeah.
But I didn't, at that point, it did not cross my mind of like, okay, I think maybe we need to break up. Now I think I have way stronger opinions on it. And get a little more amped up about it. But at the time, I think I felt so much safety in the fact that he told me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I have a question, because I think both men and women, at least today, really across the board, almost, I think just as much women as men struggle with pornography, masturbation, all of that, because it's so everywhere. Everyone. It's just, I mean, you could go on Facebook Reel and things can pop up.
Yeah.
But Tim, I'd be curious, and Naomi as well, like, how did that affect your dating relationship? Did it affect your dating relationship, even if it's more of a history or maybe wasn't happening as much, looking at porn as much maybe during your dating? How did it affect the way that you all interacted with one another?
Probably not you, because you were like the purest woman. Let's say you're like 5 years old. And
That's right. Those Montana girls, man.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the struggles it causes to most men, and this is one of the lies that porn sells to men, is that a woman, while we may call females women by label, we don't see them in the entirety of who they are. We see them as a body. So in a porn setting where a man is supposed to be not just stimulated sexually, visually, but also he's meant to have an emotional connection in that moment. where he's meant to have a bodily connection in that moment. The science is out on what even happens in sex in the brain, like the amount of synapses that are firing, the amount of endorphins that are being released for bonding and stuff like that is insane. And so you remove all of that to where a man is just by himself. And then when he goes out into the world, he thinks that the way to relate to a woman is through her body only, instead of seeing the woman as a complete human being, and that he is meant to know women emotionally. He's meant to have like safe and healthy physical touch with women that doesn't look like what he saw in pornographic videos. And so I think that is definitely one of the challenges that it posed for me, is that as much as I believed that I, was fighting this thing and I was getting freedom, I had opened a door that could put a reel on in my mind at any point of videos or images that I had seen in the past. So I think I was still really learning to work that out in the context of our dating relationship. And so learning to relate to her as I don't think I even knew that was part of the battle at that point. Now I do, but not then. And so I think for any men or women listening, that is a huge part of how your relational integrity will get stolen through porn addiction.
I think too, it can like cheat you of connection, because you think, oh, this is how I feel connection. So with Tim and I didn't have a history with that. I've never saw it, so it wasn't a thing for me. And so anytime like we'd kiss or that kind of thing, I was like, oh, this is great, this is exciting, I feel connected to you. Like I felt, or I would want to kiss him because I felt connected to him. But for him, there was a disconnect in our relationship for quite a while, and so you can almost mask it with like physical touch and all of that kind of thing, and think, oh, now like I'm connected, or you like use it to try to feel connected, but it's not going to do the trick, there's, I feel like so many layers to that, of what it does to your brain and how you view the other person. And it just cheats you of like true connection with a person,
Yeah.
And we both have the conviction that if you're in a relationship with someone who has a porn addiction, one, like if it's not being made known to you, that's a huge red flag, I would say. And then if you're engaged to another person who confesses a porn addiction, you should definitely be having some deep conversations, because we would not recommend starting your marriage out on that foot.
Yeah.
What's the difference? And then I want to hear this deliverance story. What would you say is the difference between like those who are addicted to pornography versus like they look at pornography occasionally? Like, what would be kind of your definition, just for those listening, of like, oh, I look at it occasionally, so it's not that big of a deal, to like, okay, this is like serious, What have you all seen about that?
Yeah, I think addiction versus just like you're experiencing that issue in your life on a not so regular basis. I would say the X factor in my mind is if your well-being is being built upon that alone. Like if that's what you're thinking about at the end of the day, if that's like what you're using to solve the majority of the issues in your soul, If you're, putting things in place like these apps that we've talked about, and if you have those on your phone and you're just learning ways to maneuver around them, like you're dealing with an addiction.
Yeah.
I think that some guys too that maybe are only viewing this on a fairly regular basis that don't think it's an addiction need to realize that it probably is. I don't think that something is only an addiction if you're like, if we think about it in the term of drugs, where it's like an everyday occasion. Like the thing about porn is like, it's different than drugs because it doesn't get out of your system.
Yeah.
Like it's in your head, it's in your memory. And so, like you can play those tapes or see those images anytime you want. And so that's why I think as well, like the root of all of it is lust. And until that gets dealt with, I think there's always going to be kind of like an inclination or a leaning towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, in like the realm of dating and even engagement and that kind of thing, if, you're dating a man or woman, whatever, because it goes both ways. And they're like, hey, I have this problem, I look at porn or whatever. And there's like a flippancy about it or being nonchalant about it. Like, oh yeah, it's just something I'm dealing with or, struggling with. And then it's kind of brushed off. Like I would say that's a red flag compared to someone who's like, hey, I have this, but I am like, I'm going after it because I don't want it there. Like someone who actually recognizes the damage that it does to themselves and to other people. I think those are two big things too. One, I would be like, get out of that relationship real quick. The other scenario, I'd be like, okay, that's great. Like, because someone can be in process and that's okay. I wouldn't suggest getting married to someone who's not free, but there's room for process.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I clarify something too?
Yeah, go for it.
For guys that like, if you've been free for years and all of a sudden you look at porn, like I don't think that's an addiction. I think that's I just want to make that clear that like if that pops its head up, I just think you didn't deal with something in your soul effectively, and that was the decision that was made. So I don't see that as addiction. I just want to make sure, because I don't want people to hear this and then go, well, like, guess I'm just an addict. I don't want to label people that way, but I think trying to just awaken people to realize like this is a serious fight, and you have to be as ferocious against it as it is towards you.
Well, I was just gonna comment that like I like what you said, Naomi, that it's really like the attitude, and you're looking for somebody that's like, this is a big deal, like that looks at it the way you did, like, oh, he cheated on me essentially, like like it's taking it seriously and not brushing it off. And I think it's hard to walk that line sometimes on the like receiving end of the news, I guess, that somebody is struggling with this, because like you said, it's hurtful and you don't want to dismiss it. Like I feel like in culture, they just want women to be like cool with it. Like, you know what, it's fine. All guys look at this or whatever. So there is this element of like, actually, no, this is painful and you're allowed to feel hurt by it. Like that's a real thing. And then there's also the other element of like having compassion for somebody and looking like, is he taking it as seriously as I am? So I don't know. I love that you touched on that.
Yeah.
Lauren had mentioned Tim's deliverance story.
Yes,
and
we're waiting for this.
Yeah. I mean, surprisingly, it did not happen in a church service. I was just at my apartment in Reading, and this was 2017. I think it was the spring, and I think I had heard Jay Valentin mention this TED Talk called The Great Porn Experiment. I must have been fighting something, dealing with something, so I'm like, I gotta watch this thing. So I turn it on, and long story short, what I learned in this TED Talk, which if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. This guy named Gary Wilson did a ton of study on what happens to the human body. Particularly, this was just a male study, and he discovered that this is pretty common knowledge now, that the brain will get rewired by pornography in the brain. And they had realized that at the speed at which men could view pornographic images on the internet was hardwiring brains to tell the body that when they were getting aroused, it was meant to be at that intensity and to see images. So men were beginning to struggle and have struggled with erectile dysfunction all over the world. And so I'm hearing this in this TED Talk about these issues and what this does to your brain, what this does to your body. And I'm dumbfounded, but this question pops into my head after I finished watching this TED Talk. And the question was, is that what I believe I'm worth? Do I believe I'm worth getting my brain rewired to be only able to be aroused to images on a screen, to where the point that I could develop erectile dysfunction if it gets that far? And the obvious answer is no. And so the next question I had to ask myself was, then what is my value? And as a Christian, I'm looking at the cross of Jesus Christ, and the cross tells me that the Son of God came and he laid his life down on a cross. And from my own personal conviction, I believe that Jesus didn't go and die on a cross for things that he believed were worthless. And so he died because of the value that he saw within me. And if that was the value expressed, then that was the value that I could live from, because I believe that people will always live from their highest sense of value, like wherever they fall on the value scale. Like if you see someone who's super discouraged, they're probably not valuing themselves very highly. And so we'll always manifest a lifestyle that's being lived out of where we have our sense of value. And so, like I said before, temptation doesn't stop, even when deliverance happens. And I don't think I knew, like in that moment, like I have been delivered from a porn addiction, but I had been equipped with this sense, this sense of thinking that I hadn't had before. And so when temptation would come around again, which everyone's familiar with, like this is a human experience, because I realize now, like the intensity of the battle, like this thing is trying to like come and hijack my brain and screw up my body. And if I partner with it, that's what's going to happen. And so when I would sense that temptation, I gave myself, I felt like I got permission to curse the spirit of lust, if that's what we're going to call it, the temptation to look at porn, the temptation to masturbate. And the main thing I would ask first was like, Tim, is that what you believe you're worth? Is that what you believe you're worth, Tim? And just that question alone would like awaken my brain to go, no, I'm going to fight for this. And so I would begin I felt like I had this permission to curse this spirit. And so I'm not going to say it. I don't feel peace in my heart to, but if you saw me in my apartment, if you were a fly on the wall, you would have seen Tim saying like, spirit of lust, get the bleep out of my apartment right now in Jesus' name. And it was like this thing rose up in me to really realize, like, yeah, Tim, this is a battle, like, for your heart and for your mind. And I think until our intensity to come against lust, pornography, masturbation, whatever it is, until our intensity against it outmatches its intensity back against us, like, the battle is not going to get won. And so the blood of Jesus Christ and the value expressed of the cross is the number one thing that completely turned the tide for me. And sincerely, like, this is the truth. It has been 7 years, probably 7.5 years since that day. And I have not viewed a pornographic image since.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Number of completion, 7.
There we go. It's happened. It's done so. And there's a lot of guys that think, and maybe women too, like, once I get married, this issue will go away because then I'll be able to sleep with somebody. And that is the biggest load of crap you could ever tell yourself. There's nothing true about that. Because the greatest thing you can give your spouse one day is a whole and healthy you. And that's the greatest gift you could ever give. So that was it. That was the deliverance. It wasn't like an exorcism, like the movies. I think it was the transformation of my mind and my heart that really set me free.
That's good.
Yeah, so good.
And then, Naomi, did you see a difference in Tim, or how did that affect your guys' relationship?
Yeah, it's so
that mindset.
It's funny because I really believe he was like walking in a level of freedom before this, because I don't even remember it being like, I remember the moment when he told me that one time, but I don't remember it, being a thing that happened that often. So I think he was walking in a little level of freedom before that. But I remember when he watched this TED Talk and he told me about it, and yeah, he shared with me, like, just, what he just said, like the identity piece and how is he valuing himself. So I remember him sharing just all of this, and I can't say there was probably a difference in our like day-to-day relationship, but around this topic, it was like, oh wow, he's like, this is real freedom, like you could tell there was something that really shifted in his heart.
Yeah,
like, I was ready to shout it from the mountaintops.
Yeah.
Like, this worked. Like, this is working.
Like there was like really real freedom around that.
Yeah.
It was,
and he was like excited about it, and wanted to share, and
it was right around like that later that fall. It was the Me Too movement, like, exploded on the scene. And I remember having this thought as long as porn is available and being viewed in a culture, the Me Too movement will continue to perpetuate itself. Because porn trains men to give Me Too experiences to women. And so any woman that wants to crush the Me Too movement, like, get women out of the porn industry. And men that want to do it, same thing, but train men how to think out of this place of value. And this is just a funny side story. We were in San Diego for our anniversary.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yes.
We went on this
Let's hear it.
dolphin sightseeing experience. It was amazing.
Saw so many
dolphins. There was a macropod, right?
No, macropod.
What was it called?
Megapod.
Megapod.
Megapod. Mega macro.
Whatever.
Wrong word. But we get off the boat and we're walking back to our car, and there's these two guys walking behind us, and there's a bachelorette party coming in on this like private boat, and they're coming in, and these guys are just like, saying stuff like, I wish I could get on that boat and do this and that to these ladies, and they just keep going with all this stuff. And we get to the car, and I'm like, babe, I'm sorry, I just got to go say something to these guys.
Yes,
because I'm
Tim.
like, men need to understand, like, you're living at a level lower than you were created for.
Come on.
And as long as we're going to continue to speak about women this way, boys are going to continue to create a culture where women are continually feasted upon and attacked in a way that doesn't protect them or empower them or lift them up. And so I just went up to these guys, and I was like, I can't even remember what I said. I think I was just like, guys, that was like absolutely ridiculous what you were just saying. My wife and I were right in front of you, and I was addicted to porn 5 years ago, and God set me free. And they were like, yeah, whatever, man. And they walked away. And I was like, you guys are better than this.
Yes, Tim.
Come on,
So
Tim.
good. Sounds exactly what you would
In a
do.
parking
I
lot
love
in
it.
San Diego.
Of course,
love it.
you wouldn't like cuss him out. You're like, you got a destiny, like a dad. God loves you.
Gosh.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask, like, if you're talking to somebody that is struggling with this, I guess, do you have any other, like, either practicals or even spiritual, anything really?
Yeah.
That you would add?
What do you got?
Yeah, I'm like,
Help us
emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically.
Yes, all of the above. I before I say anything, I do want to just like have compassion and empathy on the people that are listening. And those are such like buzzwords right now, but seriously, it is a fight, and I understand that. But just to remind people, like, you were not made and created for images. You were created for a real experience with a real person. And I'm not even just talking about sexually. I think the greatest thing anyone that might be stuck in a porn addiction could do is actually to find themselves in a community of people where they learn to have, to rewire their brains for positive interaction with other people, especially people of the opposite sex, where they can be safe, where like their brains can get rewired, where the touch that they have doesn't have to like be what they've seen in images. It can be positive and well-rounded for the whole experience of the person. So finding yourself in a community where you can do that is key. I think getting this value piece down, like the one question when temptation comes your way, I would say that you should begin to ask yourself is, if I'm a person of value, if Jesus expressed value for me on the cross, then does someone of my worth participate in this behavior? And if not, how do I now live? Because it's definitely not that way. And so the identity piece, I do think physically, and I think this is men and women, but men in particular, like, get out and sweat, do some work. If the greatest achievement you're hitting every day is what you get done at the office or what you're achieving on a video game, it's not, like, your body needs more than that. And when men lift weights or do physical work, what happens to their brain physiologically? I tell our boys in the youth group this all the time that are fighting this. What are you doing to exercise? Because that aggression and that focus that's often fixated on looking at porn and that temptation can get easily dismantled if you get outside, go for a run, do some squats, lift some weights, stuff like that. So I would say physically, that's what I'd say. Recognize, embrace, love, and cultivate every part of who you are as a person. This is a whole person issue. This isn't just your body and your sex drive. This is your soul. This is lust. This is fascination and fantasy. the last couple I'd say is find a sage. Got a man in my life here in Austin named Bob Gibson, who this guy's just down the road, 70 plus years old, knows how he's rooted in God's love. He knows who he is. And we can just sit and talk whatever, shoot the breeze, or we can confess to each other. He can remind me who I am. He can give me wisdom. He'll sozo me if he thinks, like, Tim, you're believing lies. I'd say find a sage. Find 2 to 3 people your age who are either successfully battling this or are completely free. And just be friends with them and do life with them and let them ask you about how you're doing at any point that they might think you're not doing okay. And then the last thing, and I mentioned this already, but make it your obsession to call your own bluff and live in the light.
Yeah.
I mean, the power of this is just, it's insane. I've seen, the power of calling my own bluff, even in the secular world, in like the workplace of Austin, Texas, where I worked in a coffee shop. Anytime I'd screw up and I knew it was going to get to management, I would just go tell them before anyone else was able to. And the funny thing is they trusted me more too, which is like a similar experience to my confession to Naomi. And so I think as you learn to confess, as you learn to walk in the light, is what will happen is you'll find I think, begin to be able to trust yourself more through self-control and doing what you say you'll do. It's just so much easier to fight this thing when you take the legs out of it at square one before it turns into a monster. So, yeah, I think that's what I'd say to anybody. And I mean, personally, I would love to say this too. Like, I'll give my work email, and if you want to put it in the show notes, and if there's anyone that wants to like talk or email on a more deep manner in conversation about this, like I would be willing to have those discussions with people.
Yeah, that's amazing. We'll do that. I did want to ask, even though we're going long, but this is like something I loved hearing you talk about this. But what do you feel like you have been able to bring to your marriage, like as a result of battling this issue, like way back here and getting freedom?
Man.
Do you want me to tell you what you've been able to bring?
Go for it.
Oh yeah, Naomi can too. Yeah,
bring it.
So I don't have to worry when we are disconnected or, just haven't seen like our ships in the night, passing. Or I just had a baby and I'm feeling really not attractive, or I'm pregnant and feeling really unattractive, or whatever. Like there's not a thought in me of, oh, maybe Tim's going to go get needs met elsewhere. Or maybe he's going to, go look at pornography because I am not attractive enough. There's not, there's no insecurity. Like his choices by going after this and not bringing it into our marriage has made me more confident in who I am. Like I don't, there's not these questions in my mind of, oh, does he think I'm attractive? Am I good enough? Like, like all those things that happen because when you get married and you have babies and your body goes through all sorts of crazy things, there could definitely be room for insecurity to slip in, but because of the choices he's made, like that hasn't happened. And then being in ministry too, there's so many people in ministry who sadly make really poor decisions. They keep it in the dark and hurt a lot of people. And Tim is by no means perfect, but because he like wants to live in purity so much, it just creates this safety in our marriage. honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you wanted to add to it, but
Yeah, well, that was amazing to hear that again. But
Yeah.
I think being able to come into marriage with the understanding that, like, my wife does not exist to please me sexually. Because I think if I came in with the same guy that I described to you before I got free, I think I would be so much more hyper focused on sex. When in the grand scheme of a marriage that might last 60 years, the amount of sex you have, if you put it in a percentage, is probably like 5% of your relationship. Like, if we're just being honest. And so the fact that I learned how to interact with her in a way, and be like connected in a way and pleased in a way that wasn't just physical touch, wasn't just in the bedroom, but we've learned how to interact verbally, non-verbally, leaving notes, like processing emotion, coming back to each other and going, hey, like, I just had a stinky attitude, will you forgive me? Like, really, I think that's one of the best things, and highly recommend Tim Keller's The Meaning of Marriage, if I can throw a book out there. That
Yeah.
gave us a just fantastic foundation for going into marriage. So yeah,
It's a great book.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
I have it on my bookshelf. No, I have The Reason for God by Tim Keller. Never mind.
Oh,
I want to be like,
might
I
help
have
you
it.
with your marriage.
Now I'm looking. Do I have it? I just want to
It's a
have.
good one.
Okay, I don't think I do. Anyways, continue.
What did you say the title was again?
The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller.
Meaning of Marriage.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We can put that in the show notes. Too.
Yeah, along with the email.
Yeah, and
Right,
the
yeah.
TED
Yes.
Talk, you could put that in there too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
This one's
Yeah.
gonna be loaded
A
with
lot
show
of
notes.
resources.
We're loading you up with the resources, man. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Oh.
Kalli, Lauren, did you have any last questions you wanted to ask?
Yeah. Well, I actually just want to say thank you so much, Tim and Naomi, for your vulnerability, because we
Seriously.
need to hear these stories and we need
Yeah.
to know what's going on in people's journey of this,
Yeah.
because I think it is just so much in our culture today, as pornography is like not a big deal or not being talked about, or it's just all bad and you're bad if you do it, if you're in the Christian world. And so it's just like showing like there's so much like nuance, and there are actually, you give so many practical steps of like your journey of like, this is what I did along the way. For those who are saying like, I feel really stuck and I don't know what to do, or I didn't even know this was an issue in my life or in my dating life. And so to hear both sides of you, it's just is like really refreshing of like, oh, I feel like I could have a conversation with like a couple that is dealing with this, or someone who was, and be like, here are some really practical ways if that's something that you do not want to have in your relationship or in your life anymore. And so, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just echo the same thing. You guys are just such a wonderful couple that has really committed to each other. And I got to see like your dating relationship and now your marriage. And I'm just so proud and impressed with the both of you, and how Jesus has always been like at the center of your relationship. And when you've gone through hard things, like you've always come together and just like worked it out. And I just really appreciate, your vulnerability and your humility and your wisdom. So we're a fan of the Spechts for a reason. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks, ladies.
It's true. Yeah. Big fans over here. So thank you guys so much. And I've been doing ministry with them, like I've come to their house and I'm still a fan. Okay. I'm still a fan, even after all that.
It's so pretty.
Because Naomi's decor, West Elm.
I've been in their living room and I was like, whoa, where are we right now? Joanna Gaines, is that you?
And then you ask her where she got it and she's like, oh, I thrifted it, or I like Facebook Marketplace. Like,
I made it
no
by
big
hand.
deal. Yeah. Or I made it by hand. Yeah.
Proverbs 31.
Yep. That's why we call her that, you know?
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, come visit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Podcast in real life. Let's do
Ooh.
this.
Yeah.
IRL.
Everyone
IRL.
come to Austin.
Yes.
And Kalli,
Yeah.
bring your sister.
Okay.
Yes.
I will.
Yeah. Katie, do you hear this right now?
Yeah. Listen up, girl.
Katie's one of our faithful listeners.
She is.
She says we're actually pretty good, or
Yeah.
we're actually decent.
Direct
Yeah.
quote.
Direct quote. One of my favorite quotes. Oh man. Yeah. Okay, well, if you listened today, I hope this was helpful and encouraging. We'll throw those resources in the show notes for you. If you want to reach out to Tim, you can.
Do it.
Literally one of the most pastoral, kind, compassionate men I think in existence, probably. So you you can't go wrong. But yeah, Kalli, Lauren, thanks for joining me. The
Happy.
Spechts, thank you so
Happy
much
to.
for being here.
Pleasure.
And everyone out there, we will talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.